Creep. Not the 2014 found footage horror film, I'm talking about Creep from 2004. Creep tells the story of Kate, a young lady who gets locked in at the London Underground and finds out that horror awaits her in the darkness. That's all I'm saying for now because I'm not going to go into major spoilers until after I've given my rating. So for Halloween, I decided to revisit this hidden gem. Now, even though I don't consider Creep to be a must-see experience in the horror genre, it's still precious to me for many reasons. Picking up the DVD again recently just took me back to a simpler time for an avid film fan. Cause Creep is an indie flick, but its marketing and release would be completely different if it came out nowadays. Back in 2004, Creep was advertised everywhere. Constant TV adverts, posters, plastered everywhere, and even the DVD was all over the place. This was back before even Blu-ray came out, let alone streaming. Indie films of this caliber wouldn't get this kind of marketing nowadays. Plus, Creep's DVD is jam-packed full of special features, far more than plenty of A-list movies have on their Blu-rays nowadays. So I kinda look at this film, this DVD, as some type of relic. Sure, it was plastered all over the place, but sadly after it came out, it kind of got buried. The reviews were okay, and sure it made some money, but almost 20 years later, I can't really find someone who's seen this film. And that bothers me because, as you can tell, I'm quite passionate about it. It does inspire me in some ways. When I watch the behind the scenes, I can see the passion from everyone who helped make this low-budget piece, including director Christopher Smith. This was his first film, and it's hard to see that because this film is very well made. And he looks like a kid on Christmas when he's on the set, like he can't believe his luck. You can tell he has a brain in his head. He grew up with this genre, he has so much love for it, and he channeled all of that energy into this film. Plus, he's from Bristol, like myself, so, I don't know, indigenous bias? I don't know what you call it. The point is, I kind of relate to him in many ways. Eventually, he went on to make films like Severance, a solid horror comedy with Danny Dyer, and Triangle, a very unpredictable, unique little horror film. I'd highly recommend checking those films out. Christopher Smith has done more, but I'm still yet to check them out. But there's also another way that Creep still affects me all this time later. It actually caused me to meet a very good online friend who I've made copious amounts of content with. That's right, Ellis, aka Total Movie Recall, this is a shout out to you. Both me and him post our physical media collections on Instagram. I started following him because I appreciated his tastes in movies, and we started bonding over this film and got talking more and more, and now me and him make content all the time. I've been on his podcast multiple times, and he's even been in 1 or 2 of my videos. And all of this productivity and collaboration comes directly from this film. Also, Creep is the first film that we saw Sean Harris in, and we've been avid fans of this actor ever since.
Number 16 is one that me and you both appreciate. I think how we might have met is 2004's Creep. Yeah, Sean Harris. This guy, man, in 2022, he's still not a big name, and he should be, but he still is acting though.
Christ, I haven't even talked about the film itself yet. Let's get into it. So in the beginning, our protagonist, Kate, I didn't really like her that much. She was just way too confident in herself. Literally, the whole reason why she's even on the London Underground is to go to an event where George Clooney will be. She thinks so highly of herself that she literally intends on flirting with him and fucking him that night. I'm not kidding. It's a pointless little detail that doesn't really do all that much for the story, but it just makes me dislike her from the get-go. And the fact that she clearly looks down on homeless people doesn't help that case at all. She's not evil or anything, it's just I seriously want to see this bitch get humbled. And that's what happens once the horror begins. She's instantly humbled and her humanity comes out. Her contempt for the homeless quickly dissipates when she gets brought down to their level and needs them to help her, putting her in their shoes. In fact, there's literally a visual pun of that when she has to borrow boots off of one of the homeless people. Once all of this happened, I finally learned to like Kate, and I appreciated how she didn't feel as generic as a load of the other female leads in horrors. She's no scream queen constantly being helpless, but she's also not an overpowered badass with a load of woke nonsense going on. Franca Potente, I think that's how you say her name, did a great job as this character. I haven't seen her in Run Lola Run yet. I have seen her in House and the Bourne Identity flicks, but for me, this is the best I've seen her so far. I loved her in this role. Now, when it comes to the side characters, they feel far more than just plot devices. They all have their own little problems and reasons to be where they are, and as frivolous as a lot of their dialogue can be, it all kind of adds little layers, little bits of colour to their situation. It makes them feel real. I love it. The only downside for all of this is the character George, played by Bas Blackwood. I liked him, it's just that I don't think they did enough with him. Still, for the most part, the side characters were awesome. Now, the idea of getting trapped in the London Underground is quite unrealistic, but it still does serve as a great location for a horror film. And all of the scares have a great sense of rhythm. Kate running around in these tunnels all alone, then meeting side characters, and then figuring out how to get someone to help her. It's just got a great pace to it. I love it. There are no cheap false jump scares scattered throughout, deflating the tension, and the subtle ambient soundtrack really does get the heart racing. I just love it. It's haunting. Now, because I'm not getting into real spoilers yet, I don't want to talk that much about the antagonist. Not that it's an earth-shattering reveal or anything, it's just better that you go into this film blind, so I won't show you the baddie here. What I will say is that Creep's villain is very fucking sinister. The acting is just remarkable, and there are plenty of puzzle pieces for you to put together to figure out the backstory there. I don't think it all works though. Some of the mysteries surrounding the villain are just too ambiguous for my liking, and there are some conveniences. I have no idea how the villain was able to go so long without being caught, or travel from place to place so quickly. It also sadly has that generic cliche where our heroes could easily kill the villain but don't, simply to keep the plot moving forward. And I do wish they removed some of the scenes where we get to see more than Kate does. Like, for example, the dog being covered in blood. I think that would have been great if we just saw it entirely from Kate's perspective. Still, in the end, I think Creep is ridiculously overlooked. It's genuinely scary, atmospheric, and has a phenomenal performance from the villain. It's a simple, fast-paced thrill ride, and I really think you should unearth this gem if you want to pump some new life into your Halloween experience this October. I'm gonna give Creep a 7.5 out of 10. Okay, so spoiler alert, I'm now about to talk about Creep's villain. So, Creep's bad guy is Craig. He looks like a monster, kind of reminiscent of the creatures from The Descent, which came out a year later, but no, he's human. A deformed, severely mentally ill hermit. For me, he's one of the more memorable horror baddies out there. I love him, and that awesome jump scare that reveals him, it's just brilliant. It sends chills up my spine every time I watch it. I like all the noises he makes, how he barely speaks, and the makeup crew did a phenomenal job on Sean Harris. And now we gotta talk about Sean Harris. This was my introduction to him, and I've loved him ever since. I need to go on a little rant here because this guy is seriously underused. Look, a few years later, I saw him in the music video for Mark Ronson's Stop Me. And then something happened and it's just been permanently erased from the internet. You can't find him in that music video anywhere. You might find some quick images, that's about it. His performance in that video has been completely erased. Now I can understand his little screen time in Harry Brown or Deliver Us from Evil, because his character was meant to have a small role. But for the most part, I just cannot forgive his lack of screen time in other projects like Southcliffe. He won an award for that show and he was the main character. Yet he was mainly only in it for one episode. And imagine the gut punch I felt when I found out he was going to be in Prometheus. And then you watch it and he has a phenomenal look and they barely fucking used him. Blink and you miss him. I cannot stand it. I haven't seen him in the Mission Impossible films yet, but from what I've heard, they underuse him in that as well. I'm sure he does have more prominent roles in other projects. I haven't seen everything he's done, but from what I've seen, he's just severely underused and I cannot stand it. But thankfully, Creep doesn't do Sean Harris dirty like that. It uses him effectively, and it's still probably my favourite role of his. What impresses me about this is he's a method actor. He refused to talk to anyone when the cameras weren't shooting. I think that's terrifying. That one actress who played as Mandy, she actually thought that Sean Harris hated her because he refused to talk to her. She genuinely became scared of him and was even more terrified when she first saw him in all that makeup. When the character, Mandy, meets Craig, that's actually them meeting for the first time when Sean Harris was in his makeup. That's the first time she's seeing him in that creepy getup, and you can see the fear coming off of her. That would have terrified me, being tied down like that and he walks in, even if I do know the cameras are on. But what I love the most about Craig as a character is he is human, hence his name Craig. He has layers. He's clearly mentally impaired, yet he's still smart enough to mimic the character Mandy in order to inspire guilt and save himself from getting his head bashed in.
Please don't hurt me.
Smart enough to use emotions against his victims. And I'm curious to know how he even learnt a skill like that in the first place. That's amazing. But in many ways, he himself is the victim. We can put the puzzle pieces together and figure out that Craig comes from some type of underground laboratory bunker. And he spent decades being locked away down there by himself, until finally he manages to bust out and goes on a killing spree. But this is where I do have some problems with that idea. I don't truly understand what this bunker is or why Craig was down there. I know he was down there as a small child, but I don't know, is he some type of clone? Were they doing experiments on him? Like, that would explain how he's still really skinny but ridiculously strong. Like when he manages to impale George's head with a spike, right? That was fucking weird. And I also find it odd how Craig hasn't been caught yet. I mean, it's implied that he's been killing homeless people for a while.
A while back, some homeless people went missing. Something was creeping up on them at night and taking them.
Are you joking?
Of course I'm fucking joking. Homeless people don't go missing. Homeless people are missing.
I get why he's managed to get away with that, but then he stops using a stealthy approach and kills multiple train drivers and a security guard. Plus, I don't get how, at the end of the film, the London Underground opens again when one security guard and 2 train drivers are dead, right? I mean, 2 trains are just stopped there in the middle of the tracks. I also have issues with the scene where Kate and George meet in the cages. Like, I have no idea why Craig didn't kill them and just left them alive in the cages. Convenient. But they also don't talk much about who Craig is. It's like, hey, look at this weird, creepy freak who's just kidnapped us. They're not talking about it? Odd. But still, I do like how at the end, even though Craig's death scene is just serviceable and filled with the conveniences, I still like how Christopher Smith made sure that he died like a human, actually staring into Kate's eyes as he bleeds out and dies. Those are my thoughts on Creep. Please check it out, guys. It deserves a lot more support. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay jiggy. The better appreciate ya.